God saw your tears. Your breakthrough starts today. There are moments when the world becomes silent, and all you can hear is the sound of your own heartbeat echoing through pain. You look around, searching for someone who understands, but the room is empty. No applause, no comfort, just you and your tears. You've been strong for too long, trying to hold your world together while wondering if God still remembers your name. You prayed, you waited, and when nothing changed, you started to wonder if heaven had closed its doors. But here's the truth the enemy never wanted you to hear. God saw your tears, every one of them. Not one drop has fallen unnoticed. He saw the moments you smiled in public but broke down in private. He saw when you carried the weight of everyone else's expectations while silently begging for strength just to make it through another day. He saw when people misunderstood your heart and judged your silence as weakness. He saw, and he never turned away. You see, tears are not a sign of defeat. In the language of heaven, tears are seeds. Every tear carries a message of endurance, faith, and surrender. The Torah teaches that God keeps record of every drop that falls from a faithful heart. Psalm 56 says, "You have collected all my tears in your bottle." That means nothing you've suffered is lost. The pain you lived through was not a punishment. It was a preparation. Maybe you don't see it yet, but the same tears that once blurred your vision are now watering the ground of your next victory. There's a divine pattern written in Scripture. Every prophet, every chosen one walked through a valley before stepping into destiny. Joseph wept in the pit before he ruled the palace. Hannah cried out before holding Samuel in her arms. David wept in the wilderness before sitting on the throne. Those who sow in tears will reap with joy. You might be standing in that same place right now, the space between what you prayed for and what hasn't happened yet. But what if this is not the end? What if what you call delay is actually divine timing? The breaking you felt wasn't God abandoning you, it was God preparing you to hold what's coming. When God sees your tears, He doesn't pity you, He moves for you. Today's message isn't just another word of comfort, it's a call to rise again. Your tears were never wasted. The same God who watched you cry is now ready to make those tears your testimony. What you've lost will not define you. What you're about to gain will reveal who you were meant to be all along. Your breakthrough doesn't begin when things change around you. It begins when something shifts within you, right here, right now. Invisible moments. There are seasons in life when silence becomes the loudest sound in the room. You pray, you hope, and still the heavens seem quiet. You watch others celebrate their blessings while you hold your breath, wondering if God skipped your name. Those are the invisible moments, the hours no one posts about, the nights when faith feels like carrying a mountain on your back. You look at the ceiling and whisper, "Lord, where are you?" And though you cannot see it yet, heaven is answering in a way you don't understand. God often works in silence because silence trains the soul. For it is in the stillness that He separates who you pretend to be from who you truly are. The Torah shows us that before Moses spoke before Pharaoh, he spent 40 years in the wilderness hearing nothing but the voice of the desert. Before Joseph interpreted dreams, he sat forgotten in prison. Those invisible years became the foundation for visible glory. What feels like delay is often divine design. Maybe you've asked why your prayers seem unanswered. Maybe you've assumed your tears went unnoticed. But the God of Abraham does not miss a single sigh. He saw when you stayed faithful, even when it felt useless. He saw when you forgave what broke you. He saw when you kept giving love after receiving none in return. Those invisible moments are being recorded in the archives of eternity. Heaven measures what humans overlook. In Jewish tradition, tears are not weakness. They are holy evidence of a soul being refined. The prophets cried before they conquered, because the breaking of the heart releases the fragrance of surrender. When Hannah cried in the temple, her tears became the language of destiny. She was not just asking for a child, she was birthing a prophet. When you cry with faith, you are not losing strength. You are creating space for God's hand to move. If you are walking through invisible moments now, remember this: silence is not absence. The same God who parted the sea is still moving waters beneath the surface of your life. He is arranging encounters, preparing answers, and shaping your character for what your future requires. What you call waiting, He calls weaving. Every hidden day is a thread in the tapestry of your miracle. So do not curse the quiet. Do not despise the hidden seasons. You are being built in secret for a victory that will be seen by all. The same eyes that saw your tears are now watching your faith, and heaven is preparing the day when your hidden pain becomes a public breakthrough. The God who records tears. There is something sacred about tears. They are invisible prayers that flow without words. When the Torah says that God remembers His people, it is not a poetic phrase, it is a statement of divine accuracy. Psalm 56 declares, "You have collected all my tears in your bottle." That means nothing you've cried was ever ignored. Heaven has archives, and your tears are part of them. They carry evidence of battles you fought privately and victories no one celebrated. Every drop has a story, and God keeps record of them all. When Joseph wept in the presence of his brothers, those tears marked the end of betrayal and the beginning of reconciliation. When David cried in the wilderness, those tears became the melody of psalms. When Jesus stood at the tomb of Lazarus, his tears revealed the heart of a God who feels before He heals. There is power in the tears of the righteous, for they remind heaven that you have not given up, even when it would have been easier to surrender. In Jewish understanding, tears fall into two categories, those of sorrow and those of sanctification. Sorrowful tears come from pain. Sanctified tears come from surrender. The first says, "I can't handle this." The second says, "God, I trust you even here." That second kind transforms the atmosphere. It opens the gates for divine intervention because heaven recognizes trust in the middle of breaking. Every prophet walked through both kinds, and both were necessary to shape their calling. You may have cried over relationships that never healed, doors that closed, dreams that died. But in the eyes of God, those tears were never signs of weakness. They were the ink He used to write your next chapter. Just as rain softens the ground for seed, tears soften the heart for revelation. You are being made ready for something greater. What once felt like grief is now turning into guidance. The same tears that blurred your vision yesterday are helping you see His plan more clearly today. Your tears speak the language of heaven. They are collected, remembered, and answered. God never wastes emotion. He transforms it into motion. Every time you cried, something shifted in the spiritual realm. Angels were dispatched. Paths were aligned. Delays began to dissolve. What you thought was breaking you was actually positioning you. Heaven is responding to what the world never saw. You are not forgotten. The one who records every tear has already written the day of your release. The evidence of your pain is about to become the proof of your purpose. The turning point. There comes a moment when heaven whispers, "Enough." The season of breaking gives way to the season of becoming. The weight that once crushed you now becomes the pressure that shapes your strength. This is the turning point, the place where the tears you sowed in sorrow begin to grow into a harvest of purpose. Nothing changed on the outside yet, but something inside of you refuses to give up. That quiet resilience is the sign that your breakthrough has already begun. The Torah reveals that God often waits until the last moment to act, not because He is late, but because He is perfect. When Abraham lifted the knife over Isaac, deliverance came in the final second. When Israel stood before the Red Sea, the waters didn't part until their feet touched the edge. The lesson is simple. God moves when faith has reached its full expression. Your tears prepared your heart, and now your faith activates His promise. Every prophet faced a point of turning. Joseph's came in the dungeon when he interpreted another man's dream, proving he could serve even in chains. Hannah's came when she prayed again, not from bitterness but from trust. Job's came when he decided to bless God despite the ashes. The moment you stop asking, "Why me?" and start saying, "Use me," everything changes. Heaven recognizes that language. That's when what was meant to destroy you begins to develop you. Maybe this is your turning point. You've reached the edge of what you can do. The prayers have been said, the tears have been cried, and now there's a stillness that feels almost empty. But that stillness is sacred. It's the silence right before dawn, the pause before a divine announcement. God is aligning people, places, and opportunities in your favor. You cannot see it yet, but the ground beneath you is shifting. What you thought was buried is about to bloom. Every breakthrough begins with an internal decision. The moment you choose faith over fear, hope over despair, obedience over pride. You don't need the situation to change first. You need your perspective to rise. When you start seeing pain as a tool instead of a punishment, you've already stepped into a new dimension of purpose. The fire that tried to burn you is now the same fire refining your calling. This is the turning point heaven waited for. The enemy hoped your tears would drown you, but they baptized you instead. You came out cleaner, lighter, wiser. The hardest part is over. What follows next is revelation, the moment when God reveals what all those tears were building toward, the shift in the atmosphere. When the turning point arrives, the atmosphere begins to change even before your eyes can see it. You start to sense something different, a peace that doesn't make sense, a quiet confidence that whispers, "It's already done." This is the shift in the unseen realm. Heaven moves first, earth follows later. The spiritual always precedes the visible. What you feel right now is not imagination, it is divine transition. In the story of Elijah, rain didn't fall until he declared it by faith. He sent his servant to look toward the sea 7 times before a cloud appeared, small as a man's hand. That tiny cloud was the evidence that the atmosphere had already shifted. You may only see a fragment of what you've been praying for, but that's all heaven needs to release the rest. The smallest sign in the natural is confirmation of a massive move in the spiritual. Never underestimate the sound of the first drop after a long drought. God never wastes pain, and He never lets tears evaporate without purpose. Each tear rises like vapor and returns as rain. The atmosphere is the place where your faith meets His response. When Daniel prayed, the angel told him, "From the first day you set your heart to understand, your words were heard." The answer was released immediately, but opposition delayed its arrival. What you feel as resistance is often the sign that your breakthrough is already on the way. In Hebrew thought, atmosphere represents breath, spirit, and movement. When God breathed into Adam, the invisible became life. When He breathed over the valley of dry bones, death gave way to destiny. When the wind filled the upper room in Acts, ordinary men became carriers of divine power. That same breath is moving around you now. The wind of God is shifting the air in your life, blowing away what is dead and igniting what is divine. The shift may start subtly. Old fears lose their grip. Doors you thought were locked start to open. People once distant begin to reach out. You wake up with ideas, peace, and strength that don't come from you. That's how heaven announces change, not with noise, but with movement. Your atmosphere is aligning with the word God spoke over your life long ago. Don't doubt the silence, discern it. You are standing in a spiritual climate change. Every tear, every prayer, every moment of surrender has altered the air around you. What once carried the weight of despair now carries the fragrance of destiny. The shift is real. Heaven has already moved. The earth is about to follow. The call to rise. There is a moment in every believer's journey when God stops the morning and calls the soul to rise. You've been through the valley. walked through nights where tears became your only prayer, and survived seasons that tried to silence your faith. But the purpose of pain was never to leave you on the ground. The same God who allowed the breaking now commands the rising. It's time to stand again, not because everything is fixed, but because everything has shifted. When God told Joshua, "Moses, my servant, is dead, now arise," he wasn't being harsh. He was awakening destiny. Joshua had cried, but there was a nation waiting on his obedience. There comes a time when tears must give birth to action, when the same hands that once wiped sorrow must now carry purpose. Your story isn't meant to end in pain. It's meant to begin in power. The tears that fell into the ground were not a burial, they were a planting. Now it's time to rise and harvest what you sowed in faith. Throughout Scripture, rising always follows refining. Joseph rose from the pit to the palace, but only after years of being tested in silence. Ruth rose from loss to legacy because she refused to remain in Moab. She followed purpose instead of pity. David rose from hiding to the throne after being anointed in obscurity. Even Jesus, after enduring the weight of the cross, rose from the grave, not only to prove his power, but to ignite resurrection in those who would follow him. Every rise requires a release, a letting go of what was so you can step into what is becoming. You may feel like you have nothing left to give. You might still hear the echo of betrayal, the sting of disappointment, the residue of fear. But if you can still feel the pull to rise, it means heaven is not done with you. The Spirit of God never calls you to stand without giving you the strength to do so. Your rise is not about perfection. It's about permission. Permission to live again, to dream again, to believe again. The breath of God is filling your lungs with courage, and the very ground that once held your tears will soon witness your restoration. Sometimes rising begins quietly. It's not always a shout, sometimes it's a whisper. It's the decision to forgive, the courage to try again, the willingness to face the day, even when your heart still aches. God doesn't ask you to feel ready. He asks you to trust that He is ready in you. You are stepping into a season where strength will no longer come from striving, but from surrender. The more you lean into Him, the higher He lifts you. The Torah teaches that when God called Jacob to return to Bethel, He told him to build an altar, a place of remembrance for where he first encountered the divine. Rising always begins with remembrance. Remember what God has already done. Remember the valleys He's carried you through. Remember the tears He turned into testimonies. The enemy wants you to forget because forgetfulness weakens faith, but memory awakens momentum. As you remember, you rise. And as you rise, everything connected to you begins to change. Fear loses its authority. Shame loses its echo. Heaven begins to release favor that was stored up for this exact moment. The people who once pitied you will witness the proof of God's promise upon you. This is not motivation, it is manifestation. You are standing in the fulfillment of words spoken over your life before you were born. This is your call to rise. Not tomorrow, not when things make sense. Today. The same voice that spoke light into darkness is speaking life into your spirit right now. Get up, lift your head, walk forward. The tears were the sign of endurance, but your rise will be the proof of victory. You've wept long enough in that place. The God who saw your tears is now calling your name. And when heaven calls, the only right response is to rise. The divine reversal. Every story written by God carries a moment of reversal, a divine turning of the page where pain transforms into purpose and sorrow becomes strength. You might not recognize it at first because divine reversals rarely arrive with noise. They come quietly through ordinary days that suddenly reveal extraordinary meaning. One conversation, one decision, one unexpected door can shift the entire narrative of your life. What felt like an ending begins to unfold as the beginning of something far greater. That's the nature of God. He rewrites the story without erasing the struggle. He redeems it. In Scripture, this pattern repeats again and again. Joseph was betrayed, imprisoned, and forgotten, until one morning Pharaoh sent for him. In a single day, the prisoner became the prime minister. Hannah spent years crying in the temple, mocked by those who didn't understand her pain. Yet the child she once prayed for became a prophet who anointed kings. Esther entered the palace as an orphan, but her obedience shifted the destiny of a nation. Every tear you've cried has placed you in alignment with a divine reversal waiting to manifest. The Torah reveals that God often hides miracles inside the mundane. The reversal doesn't begin when everything changes. It begins when you start to see differently. What once felt like rejection was actually redirection. The job you lost made space for the assignment you were created for. The relationship that ended protected you from a lifetime of distraction. The delay that made you question God's timing was the very thing saving you from disaster. Heaven's reversals rarely feel good at first, but they always turn out to be good in the end. There's a Hebrew concept called teshuvah, meaning return. Not just a return to God, but a return to your original design, the version of you that existed before the pain. Divine reversal is teshuvah in motion. It's the restoration of identity. It's when the broken heart that once bled now beats with wisdom. It's when the tears that once fell in sorrow now fall in gratitude. God doesn't simply fix what was damaged. He transforms it into something entirely new. That's why Isaiah wrote, "He gives beauty for ashes." It's not repair, it's rebirth. You may feel like you've lost too much for a reversal to be possible. You may believe the years can't be restored. But God specializes in the impossible. The book of Joel promises that He will restore the years the locusts have eaten. That means even time, what you thought was wasted, can be redeemed. Every disappointment, every detour, every sleepless night becomes the raw material for God's masterpiece. You won't just recover what was lost, you'll gain what was hidden all along. This reversal is already unfolding. Heaven has declared that the pain you endured will not end in shame. The same people who saw your struggle will witness your restoration. The same ground that absorbed your tears will soon yield fruit in abundance. You won't have to force it. You won't have to prove it. God Himself will reveal it. The script of your life is being rewritten in favor of your destiny. The verdict has shifted from defeat to deliverance. You are standing on the edge of your divine reversal. The signs may seem small, a glimmer of peace, an unexpected opportunity, a stirring of faith, but they are enough. God saw your tears, and now He is releasing the harvest that only those tears could have produced. What was once the place of your greatest pain is about to become the platform of your greatest purpose. Stay still, stay faithful, and watch as the author of your story turns the page. The revelation of purpose. Every tear you cried carried a hidden assignment. You thought you were breaking, but God was building clarity. You thought you were being forgotten, but heaven was sharpening your vision. The revelation of purpose doesn't come in the comfort of success. It's born in the furnace of struggle. When everything familiar falls apart, when the plan you built crumbles beneath your feet, that's when you begin to see what God was really doing. He uses brokenness not to destroy you, but to reveal who you were designed to be before the world taught you who to become. In the story of Moses, purpose was revealed not at the palace but in the desert. It was in the silence of exile that Moses learned to hear the voice of God through a burning bush. In the same way, Joseph discovered his purpose in a dungeon, David in isolation, Esther in risk, Ruth in loyalty. None of them found destiny in comfort. They found it in surrender. That's why Scripture says, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you." Purpose is not invented, it's remembered. It's the rediscovery of what heaven already placed inside you. Every pain that shaped you was pointing toward purpose. Every delay that frustrated you was training your discernment. Every betrayal that wounded you was separating you from distraction. When God removes people or positions from your life, He's not punishing you. He's protecting the purity of your purpose. What looks like loss is often refinement. The fire didn't burn you, it purified the gold. The wilderness didn't end your story, it stripped away everything that could not walk with you into destiny. The Torah teaches that when God called Abraham to leave his land, He didn't give him a map, only a promise. Purpose rarely begins with full clarity. It begins with obedience. God doesn't show you the entire road because He's developing trust with every step. If He showed you the entire plan, you would rely on the path instead of the presence. So He gives you just enough light to take the next step. Faith becomes your vision until purpose becomes visible. Maybe you're in that in-between right now, too far from where you were, not yet where you're going. You feel stretched, uncertain, even unqualified. But remember this, the calling is never about capability, it's about availability. God doesn't ask, "Can you do it?" He asks, "Will you trust me enough to try?" When you surrender your will to His, something powerful happens. Your wounds turn into wisdom, your scars turn into sermons, and your tears become oil for others still waiting for hope. Purpose is not about position or platform, it's about alignment. You could stand in front of thousands and still miss it if your heart isn't surrendered. But when your heart beats in rhythm with heaven, even a single act of obedience carries eternal weight. David's song in the field mattered as much as his reign in the palace. The moment you live for God's approval instead of man's applause, you step into divine significance. The revelation of purpose always comes after the storm because storms wash away illusion. You begin to see clearly what truly matters. Not recognition, not success, but obedience. The tears you cried were washing your vision so you could see destiny without distortion. You are stepping into a season where everything that once hurt you will now help you. The lessons learned in pain are now becoming tools in purpose. The same God who saw your tears is now showing you why you cried them. Nothing was wasted. Everything was preparation. You have reached the point where the pain that tried to bury you becomes the platform that will raise you. Purpose has been revealed, and it carries your name. The manifestation of promise. Every promise from God passes through 3 seasons: revelation, testing, and manifestation. Revelation gives you the word, testing proves your faith, and manifestation reveals His glory. Many people receive the revelation, but give up in the testing. Yet those who endure through tears enter the 3rd season, the fulfillment of everything heaven ever whispered. This is where faith becomes sight, where what you believed in private begins to appear in public. The same God who saw your tears now begins to display your harvest. In the Torah, God promised Abraham descendants as countless as the stars. But before holding Isaac, Abraham faced years of silence and impossibility. When the promise finally came, it carried the weight of every prayer and every tear that preceded it. The manifestation was not random, it was the result of unwavering trust. In the same way, Joseph's promotion to the palace was not sudden. It was the visible result of unseen preparation. What looks like an overnight miracle is often a decade of faith made visible in a moment. When God manifests His promise, He doesn't simply restore what was lost. He multiplies it. Hannah didn't just have a child. She gave birth to a prophet who changed history. Job didn't just recover. He received double for all he lost. Israel didn't just escape Egypt. They left carrying the riches of the land that once enslaved them. The pattern of heaven is always multiplication. The longer the waiting, the greater the unveiling. You are not behind schedule. You are aligned with divine timing. The promise is never late when it arrives dressed in purpose. The manifestation of promise is not just an event. It's a revelation of God's character. It proves that He is not a man that He should lie. Every word He spoke over your life still stands. The universe may shift, seasons may change, people may walk away, but His covenant remains untouched. The Torah calls God El Shaddai, meaning the all-sufficient one. That name means He lacks nothing to fulfill what He has spoken. When He moves, no one can undo it. When He opens a door, no man can shut it. When He restores, He does it in such a way that even the pain becomes part of the beauty. Yet manifestation also brings responsibility. When the promise appears, your posture must still be humility. The same tears that watered your faith must now guard your gratitude. Prosperity without remembrance becomes pride. God fulfills promises not to make us powerful, but to make us witnesses, living proof that His word never fails. That's why Moses told Israel, "Remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you the power to gain wealth." Remembering anchors manifestation in worship instead of ego. Look around your life. There are signs already appearing, small, subtle shifts that prove heaven is in motion. Opportunities that once seemed closed are reopening. Conversations that once drained you now direct you. The dreams you buried are stirring again. These are not coincidences, they are confirmations. The atmosphere that once held resistance now carries release. Heaven has flipped the script. What you lost in one season, God is multiplying in another. The waiting season has ended. The revealing season has begun. And when it happens, when the promise finally stands before you, you will realize that it was never just about the blessing. It was about the becoming. God didn't change the circumstance before changing you, because He was shaping someone capable of carrying what He promised. That is why every tear was necessary. Every valley was vital. Every delay was divine. You are now standing at the doorway of manifestation, the moment where what you prayed for meets the version of you that's ready to receive it. The promise has arrived. It carries the fragrance of your faith, the memory of your tears, and the glory of a God who never forgets His word. The testimony of transformation. Every promise fulfilled by God eventually becomes a testimony. What once caused you pain now becomes your platform to speak life into others. Transformation is the bridge between personal struggle and divine influence. It's when your story no longer belongs only to you, but becomes a seed of hope planted in someone else's wilderness. God never wastes a healed wound. He turns it into a healing weapon. The tears you cried in private were not just for you. They were intercession for those who would one day need your voice. Look at Joseph again. The boy who was rejected by his brothers became the very man who fed those same brothers in famine. He said, "You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good." That is the language of transformation. Pain no longer has power when purpose redefines it. The pit was not the end, it was preparation. The prison was not punishment, it was positioning. The palace was not reward, it was responsibility. In the same way, everything you've lived through has equipped you to become a vessel of comfort for others, still trapped in their own night. Transformation is not just about changing circumstances, it's about becoming the person your pain tried to prevent you from being. The Torah shows that when Jacob wrestled through the night, he didn't emerge the same. He limped, yes, but he also carried a new name and a new nature. Israel means one who has prevailed with God. That limp was not a flaw, it was a reminder that he had encountered glory and survived. In the same way, your scars are not signs of weakness. They are evidence that you walked through fire and came out refined. You don't need to hide them. They are proof that grace works. Transformation often begins quietly. It starts the day you no longer react the same way to what used to break you. It's when peace replaces panic, when forgiveness feels lighter than revenge, when your voice carries compassion instead of bitterness. That's how you know God has done something deep inside you. Your responses change before your surroundings do. The same heart that once bled now beats with purpose. You don't just survive anymore, you influence. You don't just believe, you become the message itself. In Jewish thought, testimony is sacred. It's not merely storytelling, it's partnership with heaven. When you testify, you invite God to repeat the miracle in someone else's life. That's why the book of Psalms says, "Let the redeemed of the Lord say so." Your words carry resurrection power because they come from a place that death could not conquer. When you share what God has done, you become an instrument through which others recognize that their own tears have meaning. Your story breaks chains you'll never see. Your obedience ignites faith in hearts you'll never meet. The transformation of your story has already begun. You are no longer the person who entered the storm. You have wisdom that can't be taught, peace that can't be explained, and authority that can't be earned, only endured. Heaven's fingerprints are all over your process. Every disappointment turned you into a teacher. Every loss turned you into a leader. Every unanswered question turned you into a living revelation of trust. You are no longer defined by what happened to you, but by what God produced through you. When others hear your story, they won't just see survival, they'll see salvation. They'll hear redemption in your tone and see resurrection in your eyes. That's the testimony of transformation, the undeniable evidence that the God who saw your tears has turned them into triumph. And as your story unfolds, you'll realize this truth. What once hurt you now heals others, and what once broke you has become the reason someone else will rise. The prayer of fulfillment. Father, you who see beyond time and measure the weight of every tear, this heart comes before you with gratitude, not just for the promise fulfilled, but for the journey that made it possible. Thank you for every silent night that taught endurance, for every unanswered question that deepened faith, and for every moment of breaking that birthed strength. You saw every drop that fell and turned them into rivers of restoration. Today we stand not as victims of pain, but as vessels of purpose. What once was broken now carries beauty. What once was lost now bears life. Lord, we remember your faithfulness. When we were hidden, you were preparing. When we were waiting, you were working. When we thought you were silent, you were speaking through the silence. You never left, you never forgot. You recorded every tear, and now you are releasing every promise tied to them. As your word says, those who sow in tears will reap with joy. Let that harvest begin now. Let this be the season when every hidden seed breaks through the soil and every weary soul tastes the fruit of divine faithfulness. We ask for more than blessings, Father. We ask for discernment. May we never mistake comfort for calling or success for purpose. Teach us to remember the desert even while walking through abundance. Keep our hearts soft, our hands open, and our voices humble. Let our prosperity never silence our gratitude. May our victories always point back to the one who saw us when no one else did. The power to rise came from you. The strength to forgive came from you. The light that now shines came from your mercy alone. For those still waiting in the valley, Lord, let this word reach them as proof that you are near. Whisper into their darkness that the dawn has already been written. Remind them that their tears have not been ignored. They are simply being converted into breakthrough. Let them know that you are collecting what they cannot control and that the outcome is already decided in heaven. Where there is fear, bring peace. Where there is despair, bring hope. Where there is exhaustion, breathe life again. Let faith rise like the morning sun, warming the cold places of the heart. God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, God who restores the years and renews the soul, we consecrate this moment as a memorial of grace. May it echo through generations that you are faithful to those who weep, and powerful to those who trust. You take ashes and trade them for beauty. You take tears and turn them into testimony. You take endings and reveal beginnings. So now, Lord, seal every heart that has listened to this message with a renewed spirit. Let every listener walk out of this encounter lighter, freer, filled with divine assurance that nothing was wasted. And now, as we close, we speak this declaration over every life listening. The season of mourning has ended. The season of manifestation has begun. The doors that once refused to open are now commanded to lift. The pain that once defined you now refines you. The same God who saw your tears has turned his gaze toward your victory. Walk in that truth. Live in that peace. Your breakthrough is not coming. It has already started today.